the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
All right. Good evening. Fade to Black. How you doing? I am back. Today is Monday, December 2nd, 2024. Let's do this. Man, yeah. 2.5 weeks in Peru and Bolivia doing research and, of course, leading a tour group and shooting a lot of video and taking a lot of images. I'm putting together a documentary right now on Peru, and I've got everything. I believe I have got everything that I need to finish the project up. And it's so great to be back. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I know that's a little belated, but I was traveling. I was on a plane on Thanksgiving Day and arrived home. I thought Thanksgiving was last week, well, the week before. And that threw off my schedule when I found out that I was actually on a plane on Thanksgiving. I didn't make any dinner plans because I thought I was going to do it in Peru like I did last year. But anyway, it's so great to be back, and we've got an amazing week lined up here on Fade to Black. And I just want to start with this. Tonight, we've got Thomas Winterton with us from Skinwalker Ranch, and it's going to be an amazing conversation. We're starting off the week with Thomas. Tomorrow night, it is Dr. Steve Eisenstadt. We're going to be talking about his book and his project, The Imagination Matrix. And then Wednesday night, Tom Dongo is here, a resident of Sedona of 30 years. We're going to be talking about Sedona and UFOs. And then Thursday night, Sharon Comorn is with us. She's got a new film out. It is called Alien Experiencers. And that's what we will be doing on Thursday night. On Friday, I am going to be we didn't put out the advertising on this yet, but I'm going to do a Peru special on Friday night. So I'll do a full, is the best that I can, a full Peru recap. I've got lots of video, lots of stories, lots of images. Some crazy stuff went down and a lot of fun stuff. And I discovered a lot of things. So we'll do that on Friday night with all of you. We'll get the advertising out. So there you go. All right. Now I've got 4 major events coming up. I've got the Conscious Life Expo, and that is February 7th through the 10th, 2025, right here in LA, the largest conference in the world. I'm hosting it again this year. I think it's 11 years now for me doing that. Thomas is going to be there. We've got a lot of things lined up, and you can go to consciouslifeexpo.com for tickets and info. And then after that, Rise of the Guardians, and that is March 29th and 30th, 2025 in Sedona, Arizona. And the links for that are below. And after that, the Contact Modalities Expo. That's right, I'm heading to the Midwest. That is May 2nd through the 4th, 2025 in Delavan, Wisconsin, at Delavan Lake, at a very beautiful resort, an amazing list of speakers and everything else. And I'm going to be doing UFO Skywatch, and you can get signed up for that too as well. And then after that, I'm heading back to Peru. Yeah, I'm going back to Peru for the Peru Inca Celebration of the Sun. That is June 17th through the 27th, 2025. And the links for that are below. Hidden Inca Tours. All right. All right. Now, in case you're wondering, I know that I posted a video of this. Yes, I got my toilet seat through customs. There it is. Yeah, Thomas, check that out. That's an autographed toilet seat from everybody on the tour. And it was so special to, it was a surprise. And I posted the video. I just walked out on the patio, man. I was going to go sneak a smoke and go out and do my thing. And they surprised me with that, and we became family down there. And some of them are probably watching the show right now. So hello to everybody. And there you go. Again, I'm going to do a full recap of Peru on Friday night. Now, with that, let's get straight to it. Tonight, we've got the manager of Skinwalker Ranch here. That's right, Thomas Winterton. We're going to have an open conversation about the ranch and what the TV show reveals, and of course, about him personally. He is the manager of the famous Skinwalker Ranch. He currently oversees the property, its facilities, and equipment, as well as providing logistical support to its ranching and science activities, and of course, looking for them aliens. We're going to do all of that and much more. I'd like to welcome for the first time to Fade to Black, Thomas Winterton. He's right there. Thomas, good evening, young man.
How are you?
You know, Thomas, I've got to get the first time guest disclaimer out. So let's just do that, which is this. Thomas, it's you and I sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends, and where that conversation starts, it starts. Where it ends, it ends. But we're going to end as friends. You have to accept those so we can move on.
Deal.
Yeah, deal. That man, you know, you're so polite. You're so how do I say that? You've got a glow around you, and that shows on the show too as well. And so I appreciate that. But there's a lot behind what's going on at that ranch, and it's not just the supernatural or the paranormal or possible ET contact. I get all of that. There's a lot of stress that goes on managing 500 acres. How did you get the gig prior to what is going on now?
Yeah. So, and I hope by the glow you're referring to more than the interior lights of my car here.
It looks like a flying saucer is sitting behind your car.
Got some orbs in the back seat back here.
You got some orbs going on. By the way, everybody, if you haven't gathered, Thomas was trying to get to his home office tonight and was dealing with stuff today. Couldn't do it. So he pulled over to a rest stop just to make sure that the show would go on. That's what I'm talking about. So thank you for that.
Happy to do it. To your question, I will have been on the ranch 9 years this April, and it's hard to believe it's gone by so fast. But the interesting thing is that when Brandon purchased the property back in 2016, he didn't want anybody to know that he was the owner. He was being very, very careful to kind of layer it, and so because he was afraid of it, that it might stigmatize his day job, which is he's a very successful real estate broker, deals with CEOs of Fortune 500 companies and large corporations, and was afraid that this whole crazy Skinwalker Ranch might cause problems with that. So he sent Jim Morse out. Jim Morse is a close confidant of his. They've been friends for years, and Jim Morse has a real soft spot in his heart for American Indians, and has raised literally millions of dollars for Native American scholarships. And so knowing this and knowing that the ranch sits in the middle of a reservation, Brandon asked Jim if he would come out and try to start putting the pieces together as to what he just purchased and what could be done with it. And the first weekend that Jim rolled into town, so Brandon bought the ranch in April of 2016. The very following week, Jim Morse rolled into town, and at the time, my wife and I owned a couple small luxury boutique hotels. One of them being in Roosevelt, and we're small. And I had set up a system whereby I could run the entire operation from the internet. I could check guests in, I could check them out, I could change their door codes, I could do everything from the internet. And so I met very few of my guests because I could do everything over the internet. And it just so happened that I was at church on a Sunday, and I got a call from a guest at the hotel that their TV wasn't working. And I was like, I'm in the middle of church, and so I asked him, I'm like, is this urgent? And he's all, yeah, it's urgent. I'm missing my football game, or I'm missing my baseball game, whatever happened to be going on there. There's a live sporting event. And I was like, all right, I'll be right down. So I left church. I went down to the hotel, helped them fix their TV. And I was literally walking out of the door from the room when this black SUV pulled into the parking lot nice and slow. And it rolled up to me and the window came down. And there's this guy and he said, are you a hotel? I said, yeah, we are. And he asked to see a room. So I showed him a room. And he said, oh, yeah, definitely going to stay here. So I got him checked in and I left. And the next day, I happened to be down at my office at hotel as this gentleman was checking out. It happened to be Jim Morse. And Jim comes over and introduces himself, and we get to visiting. And he finds out that I'm a licensed general contractor in Utah and that I'd actually built the hotel. And he said, I'm out here representing a wealthy businessman that just purchased a piece of ground. You may have heard of it. It's called Skinwalker Ranch. Of course, growing up in the Uintah Basin, I actually was in high school from 95 to 99, right at the height of all the strangeness that was going on with the Shermans. And Bigelow purchased it in 96. And so there'd been all kinds of rumors going around the area, and I'd heard them. And we even went out there a couple times in high school. We'd take our dates out there late at night, 10, 11 at night, do exactly what we beg people not to do and jump the gates and start walking in, we, and then as soon as our dates were scared and holding on tight, it was time to go back to the truck. So, I'd heard of the place. And when Jim mentioned it, I was intrigued. I'd never paranormal, the whole paranormal space, science fiction, none of that had ever been on my radar. I'd never watched Star Trek. Matter of fact, I didn't see my first Star Wars show until I was 20 years old. And so just not something I was really into. I was really career focused, business, serial entrepreneur. I'd started, quite a few businesses at this point. And Jim is a very successful real estate developer himself. And then, of course, he's representing this mysterious, wealthy businessman. And that part really intrigued me. And he said, would you mind coming out and doing a property inspection for us? And so the idea of being able to rub shoulders with Jim as well as this, mysterious business guy captured my attention more than anything. Although I will admit, it was, the allure of being able to go onto this property that had been locked down and was the center of all these rumors and secrecy, that had its appeal, but not because I was interested in the paranormal. And so
that's so interesting, Thomas. And I'll tell you why. I'm sure that you couldn't have predicted in 2016, 2015, or before that, quite frankly, that in February of 2025, now you are one of the star presenters at a UFO conference, right? And you're going to be you, Caleb, myself, and Dragon on Saturday morning. We're going to be sitting down in front of a packed house where we are going to sit and talk about what is going on at Skinwalker for the world to see. You're going to be on a UFO panel. You're going to be at my disclosure lunch, right? All that, now you are knee deep in it, man. Did you see any of this coming?
No, I mean, I didn't even believe that all this was real.
Do you now?
Yes.
Yeah. This is okay. All right. Now let's go. Let's stay on track here with 2016. Of course, it's a small area up there. Everybody is, where all the houses are, the families. Everybody's in everybody's business. I get that. I totally get it. So the rumors about Skinwalker, that's good stuff, right? That's good stuff to have floating around town. And you're aware of all of that, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, it was big talk at the time. I remember there was some newspaper articles and there for a little while, it was the talk of the town. I mean, we were featured in Deseret News, which, for a little tiny place like the Uintah Basin, the Deseret News is one of the two major newspapers out in Salt Lake. And so for us, this exposure and being front and center. But the thing of it is that the basin's been there have been a lot of strange things going on in the basin for years, and it kind of brought that to I guess, with the ranch going public like that and it being in the Deseret News, it gave other people the opportunity to share their experiences. And maybe that was the first beginnings of opening up and starting to peel the scab off of this stigma of, UFOs and paranormal and stuff. But yeah, I'd heard now I've never read the books. George Knapp is going to, probably be upset at me for saying that. But he's a good friend of mine. But I've never watched the documentaries. Again, it wasn't that wasn't anywhere in my interest.
Now, so let's go 2000. As you were growing up, I'm sure that you had friends, talk about things or families or things that were seen. Did you ever have a paranormal experience or see anything in the sky prior to working at Skinwalker?
One time. So, and I didn't even know it at the time. We used to have an oil refinery in Roosevelt, and growing up, my bedroom window overlooked the refinery out towards the west. And I was up late one night. I wish I could remember how old I was. I bet you I was like, I don't know, 10. But I remember looking out the window, and this is probably 11 o'clock at night, maybe later, I'm not sure. And the moon was out there just above the refinery. It's just a big, beautiful half moon, just orange. When they first come up, and they're just that brilliant orange and just so big. But the thing about this moon was that normally I when I think of a half moon, it's kind of on the side. This one was dished like get my hand in the camera here. It was dished like this, and but being a kid, I didn't think anything of it. It was just gorgeous moon. And so I looked at it for a second. It's just out there on the horizon, above the refinery, not too far. It looked like it was getting ready to set. I go about my whatever I happen to be doing, and right before I call it a night and go to bed, I look out the window again to see if the moon was there, and it wasn't, and I just assumed that it had dropped below the horizon.
Uh-huh.
So the next morning when I woke up, I happened to mention to my mom, I was like, man, you should have seen the moon last night. It was so pretty. And my mom said, I don't think there was a moon last night. And I was like, oh, yeah, I saw it. It was out there. And she's like, I don't know. So we looked at the calendar, and sure enough, there was no moon that night. So I don't know what it was I saw out there on the horizon. Big, beautiful moon, but it wasn't the moon. The moon wasn't, it was a period of time when there was no moon. So don't know what it was. Wasn't a scary experience. Wasn't anything other than, that was interesting.
Yeah, we all have that, right? We all have some memory that we just kind of, it was strange at the time, but you put it in a box, you put it on the shelf, and you just kind of go about your day. Life goes on. But if you go back and you think about it, like that experience, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, wait a minute. There's something. Yeah. And we all have that. And we all do. That's a Class A sighting right there. And something that you may want to revisit. So back in 2016, so Jim, we'll move past the logistics part of it. You get the gig. Was it to be the manager? And was that the deal to come in and just start to facilitate the property?
Well, Jim came out the very next week. We went out there to do the property inspection. And I remember rolling on the property and looking at it, and it's scenic, it's beautiful. But I grew up in the basin. It looks like most other properties out there. And right. I remember looking and thinking, I don't see what's so special about this place. A lot of ways, everything was run down. Found the ranch to be in a really sad state of disrepair, and found that there was some major issues that needed to be addressed, both from a facilities standpoint as well as legal issues. Come to find out, the road that went through the ranch was actually a public easement. So all those times when we thought we were trespassing by jumping the gate, we were actually on public right of way. And had we known, we could have walked all the way through the middle of the ranch and they couldn't legally do anything to us. So these were all serious issues that had to be addressed. And I went to work addressing it. I needed a new septic system. We had mold in the caretaker's house. So I went to work. There was no talk about like titles or positions. It was just purely, honestly, it was my selfish desire to impress Brandon and Jim. I'm a small town entrepreneur that had big time dreams, and I knew from an early age that relationships are everything. Like, you're not, if you need something, it's not that you need more money, you need the right relationship. And so I selfishly was viewing this as my opportunity to impress Jim and Brandon with the hopes that it could develop a relationship and maybe catapult me career-wise into something. I wasn't sitting there saying, man, I'd love to run this place. It was me saying, I hope I can do these guys enough favors that, maybe then it opens up doors on the business side. And so I helped get, as a general contractor, I had good subcontractors. I got people in there. We got things fixed. And after I got the road vacated legally through the county, Brandon just said, you're out there. You've done a good job. Will you just run it for me and manage it? And so that's when that kind of became official. And that was like November.
So the obvious question, so I'm just going to pop it right now. How soon after you set foot on the ranch did you have or see something strange for the first time?
I'd been there about 25 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds about right. What happened?
Well, we're in the ranch house doing the inspection, and we walk into the southeast bedroom there in the house. It's just a tiny little house, 2 bedrooms. We're back in the back bedroom. It's Jim Morrison, myself, and the caretakers. They were in I think they were in their early 70s, elderly. They'd been there since 2000, the year 2000. So they've been there for 16 years. And we're back there visiting. And I'm in the room when all of a sudden I start to feel really dizzy. And I start to have severe vertigo to the point that I backed up to where my back was against the wall. And it literally was like the room was spinning around me. I mean, I felt like the room was spinning. And I actually slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor. And of course, Jim and the caretakers see me do this. They're like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've been borderline hypoglycemic for a long time. My blood sugar gets low. I get a little bit lightheaded." And so I just told him, I'm like, I'm just hypoglycemic. Like, just give me a second, and I'll be fine. And I sat there for, I don't know, a minute or two, and then it stopped, and I got up and didn't think anything about it and went on my way. It wasn't until I just automatically assigned it to something that I knew, didn't think anything of it, and just moved on. It wasn't until a couple years later, I mean, I've been on the ranch 2 or 3 years, when I look back at that and I realize a couple things. First, I've dealt with this borderline hypoglycemia for a long time. And yeah, I get lightheaded, but never in my life had I experienced that spinning sensation. That was something that was new to me. And then it also occurred to me that there's no way it could have been low blood sugar, because Jim Morse and I had lunch at the Ute Plaza Grill up the road. And we left straight from the cafe and went to the ranch. And so, at most I was like 45 minutes removed from just eating lunch. So there's no way it was blood sugar. So something, really affected me. Again, an incident that in the moment I just dismissed, wrote off. But then as I'm looking back, I realized that's only happened to me twice in my life, of having that spinning sensation to the point I couldn't stand up. And both times were on the ranch. It's never happened to me anywhere else. So
is there anything, we're going to jump into so many subjects tonight, because Skinwalker seems to have a little bit of everything going on there. And is there you've got portals and the possibility of Bigfoot, and of course skinwalkers and aliens and spaceships and orbs and ghosts, and just about everything has been attributed to that property, right? Is there any boundary that now should be excluded?
No, I really think that's one of the special things about the ranch. I mean, we know that there's hot spots all over the world that are famous for various things, whether it be UFO sightings or whatnot. But I think that's what makes the ranch special, is that it seems to be kind of the perfect storm where we have a whole conglomeration of a lot of different phenomena taking place there. And so, I don't know that there's anything that I could think of off the top of my head that would be excluded out of that.
How cool is it that you've got a guy like Brandon, and of course, a hit TV show and what goes along with that, where you guys get to you think of an experiment and you can go and do it. And that includes firing and blowing up stuff and really big rockets. I got to tell you, that's pretty cool to have that at your disposal. Anything that you guys can think of for an experiment, you have the ability to go and do it. Not many have those opportunities, do they?
No, I do feel very fortunate. And there's a lot of times when I pinch myself and think, is this reality? Is this real? And you're right. Like it's been a big blessing.
Well, how big of a rocket do you guys want? Right.
Don't ask Travis that. He would.
Right.
Travis say, "Get me one that get up into space, man." I don't think there's a limit on what he tried to do.
Now, I'm going to ask something specific here. If it was me, and I've said this on the air, Thomas, this isn't anything new, but if I was Brandon, I think that the Mesa is not a Mesa. I think it's a bunch of dirt covering up a big spaceship. That's what I think. Why doesn't Brandon just dig that thing up?
That's a great question. And honestly, I think anyone that's been following our investigation, that's probably their top one or two questions right there. And we started off just looking for tunnels. That's how this whole expedition started. We had long heard all these rumors, and more than rumors, we brought on credible individuals that had firsthand experience of telling of going into caves on the ranch. And yet we bring them, they can't find the cave. They can't find, and the problem is they were kids when they were in there, at least the ones that we brought on. And so nobody can show us where this cave is at. And then we bring Chris Bartell, who was a guard for Mr. Bigelow on the tail end of his ownership of the property. And Chris had, in his one of his patrols, had actually found an opening in the Mesa. And while, when he showed it to us, it's fairly deep. I'd guess it was like 8 or 10 feet deep and probably big enough for like 3 people to get down in there. But it looked like it had been collapsed in the back. And there was some steel traps down in the bottom of it showing that there had been people down in there. And it sounds, steel trap sounds like something that a bunch of teenage kids would be, packing around setting. And so we're thinking, well, maybe this is finally like, okay, if this collapsed, if we brought in a directional drill and we come up in the back, and maybe we can pop up behind where it's collapsed and find a void or an opening, because we've heard of this vast tunnel system across the ranch and no signs. We've tried to GPR, but every time we GPR out there, which ground penetrating radar, without fail, they come back and they're like, there's so much interference in that soil. It basically put so much noise in their results that it's hard to make heads or tails out of anything. And so all of our results have been, or most of them have been, very inconclusive and not really revealing. So in the process, as you know, of trying to find this tunnel, we end up bringing some metal out of the Mesa. And the metal, the opinion of the university, those that looked at it, the professors that looked at it said, this is not natural. This is forged. And so then automatically the question is, what is, forged metal doing 300 feet inside the Mesa?
Right.
So at that point, we probably could start digging. But here's the thing. In the process of digging for this, the data that was coming back to us was more perplexing probably than the actual metal that we pulled out of the hill. We're seeing the beacon, the directional drill in the drill head's got a beacon that transmits, and then the drillers have a locator that sits up on top of the ground so they can tell exactly where that drill bit is at and what direction it's headed and what the pitch is. And the drillers are witnessing this locator behave in ways, and the beacon behave in ways that they've never seen anywhere else. And these guys are very, very experienced, and they've been all over the basin. So now we're starting to see behavior, and then we start seeing the signal spread, which, the second year we drilled and we hit the object, and automatically that beacon signal, which is I think it was at 33 megahertz, suddenly spreads across the spectrum. We pull the drill bit back and it goes back to a single peak. Push up against, we repeated that back and forth. Well, what the heck would do that? And of course, I'm not a scientist. I really I take my cues based on what I'm seeing from Eric and Travis, and they're perplexed and baffled as to what's causing this. And so then we decide, because they can't drill through it, we put 8,000 pounds of pressure on it. He drilled for 30 minutes, couldn't get past it. And so then we decided, you know what? If we went up one side of it and we went up the other side based on the GPR that Jan Frank gave us, rather than try to hit it, because now we're really thinking there is absolutely an object inside of the hill. And let's take your theory that that's a spaceship sitting inside that hill. And let's say that it's powered by nuclear reactors, or maybe even something more dangerous that we're not even aware of. And we go punching through the middle of it with the drill, and we hit that. We're drilling into something we don't know anything about, and so we decided to treat it more like an archaeological dig than an actual. And we went up the side of it last year. That's what you saw in season 5. And I'm going to tell you right now, things like the signal spreading, and what that means is that locator, when it's up on top of the ground, one of the indicator numbers on the locator itself is a signal strength of how strong the signal is coming from the beacon to the locator. And that really is what triangulates and tells you when you're exactly over top of it, because the beacon strength is the strongest directly above.
Right.
Well, once we get to that point where the GPR shows that object is sitting, the signal starts to spread. And what that means is when we got up on top, that locator, that signal strength stayed the same for 185 feet across the top of the Mesa. And what could possibly do that? Well, in talking with the drillers, they have seen the signal spread wide before, but only in one scenario. And that's when they're drilling under highways, and the Department of Transportation puts the thick steel plates over the road for the cars to drive on, and they go under the steel plate. So the only time they've ever seen signal spread is when they're under the steel plate. But even then, it's not spreading that much. So we've got something in there that's spreading 185 feet. To your question, all of this is such valuable data, because if let's just say we were to go get some big excavators, dig right down to it, find it, we may miss out on what the object actually does, how it interacts.
I see that. And the other, whenever I look at the images of the Mesa versus the terrain, not only around it, but off in the distance, it doesn't match. That looks like a covered object. Millions of years of soil and everything else, and what happens naturally to the geology there. But it looks like something is covered, and that's it. So hypothetically speaking, and I don't think we're going too far out there, spaceship broke down. All right. called 911 and AAA didn't show up. Right. So they just left it. And I don't think I'm like speaking crazy talk. It makes sense to me. There is something going on with that Mesa and the drills. To watch you guys get bigger and bigger and bigger, right, over the seasons with the heavy equipment coming in, when that drill just kept stopping, right? And it's a big drill. And if it's not penetrating there, you've got the best bits, you've got the best company, all of that. It's not rock. There's something else there. It looks metallic, but the fact that the signal is spread, and I keep backing up going, well, it's spreading over the Mesa, right? And it's a dome shape. And I that's where my mind goes. I don't think I'm too far removed. Why doesn't Brandon just come in with a bunch of earth movers, a bunch of stuff, and start scooping the dirt away? Is it Indian? Is it a reservation? Is there some legal side of it that you're not allowed to do that?
There's two things. Look, I don't think I would have called you crazy several years ago for sure for saying that. Okay, but there's a lot of data, a lot of it's anecdotal, but we have credible witnesses going back decades that have claimed to see flying craft fly in and out of the Mesa right there. Okay. That's not us claiming it. That is neighbors and people in the surrounding area that have watched the craft supposedly fly down and go into the Mesa. Now, I'm not saying this is what it is. Let's explore this a little bit. Okay. Let's say that is indeed true, that there's a spaceship in there. Well, could it be that these craft that normally become transmedium and they interact differently with the soil? Maybe they are used to being able to fly in through like that, but possibly there was something special about the conditions on the ranch. We're always asking, why Skinwalker Ranch? Like, why are there so many UFO sightings? Why is there so much strange activity reported there? Could it be that there's some special feature of the ranch? We've found that, there's strange energies coming from anywhere from 31 to 5,000 feet. And as the craft came in, like business as usual, it's going to fly in like they normally do. But the electromagnetic interference, maybe there was an EMI or something that happened as it got in there, and it did what it would do to our circuitry, right? EMI could blow the circuits, and all of a sudden it came to a screeching halt. Well, then that means the spaceship is only half the mystery. What created the EMI, or the EMP, sorry, not EMI, EMP, electromagnetic pulse that took it out? What created that? Like, what phenomena is taking place at the ranch that it makes it such an attraction, such a magnet for all these anomalies? The spaceship might be a symptom of that, and not actually the propagator. I wish I could communicate more clearly, but if we go tearing into the Mesa, we've already shown that the current is flowing weird. We are having all kinds of strange electromagnetic activities there. Once we dig that out, and that Mesa right there where that is right now is showing probably the most of activity of the entire Mesa. You're right. It is absolutely, just visually to the eye, it's absolutely different than the rest of the Mesa. But it could be that we damaged the very thing that we're trying to study.
Right.
And we find the spaceship. Okay, what made it crash? Right? So we're trying to take this very carefully and gather as much data about the crime scene per se before we go, because once we dig into it, we can't undo that. It's permanent.
That's true, but you can get a lot of power washers and leaf blowers, right? And blow that stuff away. And let's back up for a second. There's so many things we need to touch upon. I don't know if it was season 2 or season 3, but the friggin' helicopter stuff that was going on. and in season 2 and season 3 and part of season 4, you guys were having GPS issues. All the drones were acting funky. The helicopter was and Brandon's pilot. I would never get in that helicopter, by the way, not over Skinwalker. Too much stuff going on. But there was that one. I don't know if it was the last episode of this. Anyway, you guys caught this white orb from the helicopter. Helicopter's up, I don't know, maybe 1,000 feet or something, 1,500 feet. But that white orb came in the back side of the mesa and then popped out the front. That was one of the, I talked about that on this show for a couple of weeks, and I watched that over and over again. That one is a tough one for me I try to be rational, try to be objective. I don't want to go crazy here, but that was something pretty incredible to catch on video. What did you make of that?
Let's be honest. Some of the things I'm still trying to wrap my head around. I don't know what to make of it. That's just the honest answer. Watched it probably 100 times at this point.
Right.
And I still don't know what I'm looking at as we watch it, and Eric has modeled it down to the nth degree. And, at the end of the day, we don't have enough information to really say anything other than we absolutely captured something on camera for which we don't know what it was.
So do you look at our community and take this the right way, Thomas? No, take it the wrong way. Take it the wrong way. Our community is largely used to be looked at, tinfoil hats, crazy, woo-woo, psychotic, whatever it is, big imaginations. But we all have our experiences, and there's reasons why for us personally that we are part of this community, myself included. Did you look at this community that way? And do you realize now you're one of the tinfoil hat, crazy woo-woo people?
Absolutely. I looked at it that way. I remember the network asked us to go to Alien Con to promote the show. And this was June of 2019. So we had filmed like a couple days, enough that they put together a teaser that they played. This is Alien Con in LA. And I had a lot of apprehension leading up to this because, again, my whole perception of this space was exactly what you said, right? Somebody in an Airstream trailer in the Mojave Desert in their underwear and tinfoil hat. How did
you know I had an Airstream trailer?
It's just all part of it, right?
Right. Oh man.
Probably that's how it was perceived on TV a lot, but I was really worried about these crazy people that I was going to I was worried. I'll be honest. And what I found when I got there was that was an experience in and of itself. We get to Alien Con, I'm looking around, I don't see any tinfoil. Matter of fact, I don't even really see any people that I can identify as different or strange or crazy. What I see is what I saw was actually quite a few very educated, rational people that grew up, the guys that grew up with Star Trek and Star Wars, or like you said, had their own experience. But I found software engineers, I found all walks of life, and I'm literally looking for the crazy people, and I couldn't find them. And I remember that was kind of a shift, that whole experience of going there. Then we went to Alien Con in Dallas in October when we'd finished filming. And again, there were about 5,000 people there. And same thing. I'm finding normal, credible people, and they're sharing their experiences with us as we're interacting. And I'm got to remember, I went into this whole thing as a huge skeptic. Now, I will say that by the time we got to this point, I'd had enough of my own experiences that had gone from skeptic to experiencer and believer. But I was still curious. I knew I had mine, but as I listened to people, I would look them in the eye, and I'm looking for signs that they're making this up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't find any. I like these people were sincere. They were, very authentic and passionate. And so it didn't match up. And I remember really having to jive that and like recalibrate what this community is.
Well, and that's part of the phenomenon, in that I can have somebody come up to me, as do you, that I've just met, and whatever crazy ass story. Oh, I just swore. I said a bad word. Whatever crazy story they could throw at me, I've got my own experience that's crazier. Right? So I have to give them the same respect, because I know I've been to crazy town. I've seen stuff that I can't explain. And it's the same thing with you guys up at Skinwalker. No matter what, somebody can come up and share an experience with you, and whatever that could be about, you guys have experienced something even nuttier than that. So therefore, right, you have to give everybody the same respect. If you want people to show the respect for the show and to listen to you guys, well, it's a two-way street, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. And not to do that is so hypocritical.
Right.
I mean, you have intellectually, in order to come to terms with where you're at, you also have to allow the fact that you're not the only one that's ever experienced things. And you're right. Like I've had a couple of experiences. Some I may never share publicly. Too traumatic and too personal. But I remember thinking, like, I'm losing my grasp on reality. I'm like seriously having the thoughts of I've got to get away from this before it consumes me and ends up destroying me. And then I think for me, the real, I won't swear either. Trying to think of a better descriptive word than mind.
Right. All right. Go ahead. Let it out. Let it out, Thomas.
You all know what I'm talking about.
We understand that descriptor.
I won't drop the F-bomb, but
yes.
What really twisted me up is when very credible people, some holding high positions, just leave it at that, not only believed me 100%, but the shocking part is that the reaction to what had happened to me didn't even faze them. All right. And for that not to faze you, you've either had to witness it yourself, you've seen it so many times, like, because I didn't want to share this particular thing. And when I did, I was sure at that point I had lost all credibility. And I was assured that no, you're very sane, you're grounded, don't question yourself. And that right there, I'll just tell you right now, that one experience turned me upside down. That is when I had to come to terms. That's back in 2017. It's when I had to finally come to terms with the fact that there's a lot of strange things happening here that we don't have explanations for, and it doesn't make them any less real. And there are very credible people and organizations that are well aware of it, and that's honestly, I think I would have been able to deal with it better if they would have looked at me and started laughing and said,
"Well, that's
lost
exactly
your mind."
Right. Because you're thinking to yourself, "Oh man, how are they going to react? Okay, I'm just going to spill it out." And you built yourself up for it, right? And you get it out, and you're waiting for the reaction, and the reaction is, "That's all you got?" Well, of course, right? It's like, wait a minute. The reaction was, "But how long have you guys known?" And which takes me to this next part. You guys, Skinwalker's remote. People need to understand what Utah is in that part of the basin, and that part of the country, that part of Utah. It's remote, man. There's not. I live in the desert. I live in a remote area, not nearly as remote as what's going on with you guys. But to have black helicopters, unmarked aircraft, things circling above, that it's mysterious. Yeah. Okay. No, I think the bigger point is they know what's going on down below, and they want to check out and see what's happening. And that's the only way to look at it, isn't it?
That's how I compartmentalize it.
Do you remember? You remember the episode? I want to know what the follow-up was behind the scenes. I can't remember what season. You guys were filming the black helicopters, and this Chinook went over, and hanging out the back were a couple of guys on the ramp, sitting there, kicking their feet, right? And we're looking at you guys. And that was pretty. What did you ever find out who they were, or why they were cruising around that low and observing?
So the answer is no. They've been very, very tight-lipped about any flyovers, any activity, and we inquire, and they're very tight-lipped about it. I will say that I personally believe that a lot of the flyovers that we get are training ops, and it's pilots needing to get their hours. And if you get to choose and you're going to go fly someplace, hey, let's go check out Skinwalker Ranch. That being said, not all of them fit in that category, and our frustration with the government and the military is, if it's a training ops, just come clean, tell us. We got guys out there we have pilots that need their hours. But we know for a fact that we know for an absolute fact that some of these were in fact not training ops. And I'll give you one example. I think the Chinooks, if I had to guess and put money on it, I'd say the Chinooks was probably a training ops. But the Black Hawk that flew over us the night that we saw the blob, when you line up the sequence of events, here's, and I don't remember exactly how it shows on television, but the sequence of events that night, we had the high-speed cameras. We had that, I want to say his name was Burdett. We like bringing on these subject matter experts that are good with their own gear, right? So that if stuff happens, we don't have to question whether it's use or air, because these people know their equipment. They know their stuff. As opposed to us just renting some high-speed cameras and then we capture something, we don't know if we just had it on the wrong setting or not. So we brought Burdett in with his high-speed cameras. I don't remember the exact scenario, but whatever we had planned, the exercise we had planned for that evening fell through. And so last minute, we're like, oh, crap. We got these high-speed cameras, and the other stuff that we were planning on just fell through. We can't do it. So what are we going to do? Well, when all else fails, let's shoot off rockets, right? So we're like, we'll go set them up. We'll shoot off rockets in the triangle, and we'll use the high-speed cameras for that. Now, we go out there, and right off the bat, we saw a pretty incredible UAP. And here's the interesting thing is that we changed plans at last minute, and I will say, I feel, my personal feeling and belief is that we're monitored very, very close, and that they keep very close tabs on what we're doing. But this night, plans change. We see this UAP in the sky, and then we go ahead and we see it. I've got a great video of it on my phone. We captured it with the network cameras, and then we go, after the excitement of that dies away, we get back to task of shooting off rockets. Now, we had a NOTAM out for the ranch while we film. It's a notice to airmen, and we had a 2-mile diameter around the ranch that's a no-fly zone below 3,000 feet, and that's sent out. So no aircraft is supposed to be in that space, and we had that filed for that night, and we shoot off the rocket. And the rocket goes up 31 feet, appears to hit. I'm not going to say it hit something. It appears to hit something, veers up, blows up, shoots off, catches on fire. And then when we check the high-speed cameras, that's when we first see this blob.
Blob, right.
which, by the way, we caught on a second camera, one of Eric's cameras from a completely different angle from the east that shows the same thing. So we have 2 witnesses of that.
I remember when Eric came in and goes, "This is interesting, but check this out. I got another shot." That was pretty compelling, man.
So
that was one of the big rockets too. Tim was all excited that he got to fire the big rocket.
yeah. So here's the thing. We're all excited about this blob, and we're like in the moment, and we're just getting past that phase when all of a sudden this Black Hawk helicopter flies. They were no more than 300 feet off the ground. I mean, we're talking the top of the mesa is probably like 120 feet from off the triangle. And then the helicopter was another probably 150 feet above that, about 300. I don't think it was over 300. It might have been
low.
4.
That's low. That's low. Yeah, you can see everything, and they can see you, and you can see them.
Yeah, well, so it's pitch black at this point. You know, we're in total darkness as far as time of day. But what I will say is we've had Cameron out there enough. You start to get a feel for the elevations because Cameron, we're always doing exercises where he's calling out his elevation. They were 400 feet tops. Okay. They go right through this area that's noticed. I mean, not just like skirting it, right through the dead center because the triangle was the center of that NOTAM that was sent out. They fly over us. They go to the south a little bit. Then they head out to the east. Then they turn around. They come back towards the west. They stop there for minutes and minutes and minutes to the point that all of us started to get behind vehicles, putting vehicles between us and them because we literally felt like we were being threatened. And we felt like we had sights on us. It was very unnerving. And then they finally leave, and they're not broadcasting, no ADSB, which in the dead of night, I mean, technically military doesn't have to, but you're running a risk because you're not letting other aircraft in the area know that you're there. You're posing a threat not only to yourself, but to anybody else in the airspace. And our drone pilots have an app that tells them when there's aircraft in the space for their drones. And so the network drone pilot, he's looking, and Eric's saying they're not broadcasting, they're not on our ADSB. And the pilot's looking, they're not on our ADSB. We're on the radios talking back and forth. Well, they start to leave the ranch, and just as they get out, I mean, they were probably maybe 2 miles out west of the ranch, headed back. And our drone pilot for the network, he's like, they just flipped it on. And I can't remember if it was myself or one of the guys, I think it was me, jumped on the 2-way radio with Eric and said, hey, they just turned on their ADSB. And the second I did that, then they turned it back off.
So they were listening too.
I believe they were.
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you start lining up, so we inquired as to what they were doing. Obviously, they flew right through the middle of the airspace, and they would not tell us. And we have some back channels and different sources, you know, that we tried to get that information through, and they wouldn't tell us. And we were able to find out it was not a training mission, but the only information we were able to truly get concrete data on was their flight path, when they took off, where they took off from, their flight path coming to us, and then going back. And I can't remember. I think they may have taken off Salt Lake No. 2 airport, flew out, and then landed in Heber, or vice versa. But that's not necessarily important. The interesting thing about their flight path is the timing, and this is what really makes me go back and look at this. The timing of them having to take off, of when they would have had to jump in the helicopter, would have been minutes after we saw the UAP.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, I wonder if somehow if they were monitoring, they picked up the UAP in the sky, and they jumped in to come out and see what was in the airspace, or to check it out. And then, you know, they get over us and they're trying to figure out, are we doing something that caused that? Or, you know, what are we doing? And part of me wonders if their visit out to the ranch that night wasn't in response to the UAP that we saw up in the sky, because the timing is so almost perfect as far as when we saw it and when they would have taken off in Salt Lake. And then they intentionally, here's the other thing about the flight path.
Oh, that's interesting. I see what you're saying. When they would have taken off, the UAP wasn't seen yet.
No, we would have just seen it. We would have just seen it up in the sky, and they would have taken off just a very short time later, almost as if in response to maybe something popped up on their radar, and they were, I don't know. Maybe they're monitoring us, and we were sitting there talking about the UAP, and they flew. But here's the crazy thing about their flight path. Their flight path, they flew up to the north. The Uintah Mountains run east-west, and the ranch sits in the bottom. And then there's a big peak of mountains. Kings Peak's about 13,700 feet, I believe. So we're talking Uintah Mountains are a pretty good mountain range. They flew on the north side of the peak, meaning that probably any radar that would have been blocked out by the mountains until they got due north of the ranch. And once they got due north of the ranch, they came up over the peak of the Uintah Mountains and flew straight down to the ranch. It was when I look at it, my interpretation of it is they were trying to block their arrival as long as they could, and that's why they skirted up the north of the mountains and then popped up and came straight down, as trying to be undetected.
Not a coincidence.
There is a lot of interesting facts at night. So some of them training ops, and we've maintained, look, at this point, if you're not going to come clean with us on when you're just doing training ops or otherwise, then we're automatically going to assume that every flight is surveillance and nefarious. So if you guys don't like us claiming that, just come clean with us and tell us what's going on. I don't think that's classified to say that you were training. You had a pilot that was out there getting hours, right? What's the big deal of that? They do it in other areas. So until they come clean, we've just said our policy from here on out is every flight is something bad until you start to tell us otherwise.
Let's take our break right here. This is Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Thomas Winterton. And Thomas, stay right there. We'll be right back after this short break. We'll pick up the conversation right here when we get back. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Be right back after this short break. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and get the Fade to Black official podcast. 2,000 episodes, all of them commercial free for just $2 a month. Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's Fade to Black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? How you doing? Jimmy Church here. Special announcement. Get your Fade to Black T-shirts. That's right. Help support the show. Help support everything that we do over here. We've got 2 T-shirts. We've got 2 ways to get them. Get your Fade to Black T-shirt today. Go Backley Tappy. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut. River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Thomas Winterton is with us. He is, of course, the manager of Skinwalker Ranch, and, of course, one of the stars of the hit TV series, The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. And, Thomas, I want to get straight back to it here in that there's another part of this that I want to explore, which is the indigenous culture and some of the things that have been witnessed there going back centuries. About 10 years ago on this show, I interviewed, you probably know who this person is, a member of a family that owns the last convenience store and gas station before Skinwalker Ranch, right? So he comes on the show. I had some friends up there that were doing some investigations, and we did this live on the air. And he didn't talk about UFOs, but what he did mention was the house that the family lived in. Behind the house, there was a barn, and behind that barn lived a ghost dog without legs, red eyes. And he said one night the family saw this apparition many times, but he said one night they pulled up in the car and it was in the front of the house. They all looked at it. It looked at them with its glowing red eyes, and then it took off running behind the house without legs, right? It's got no legs. But he said it was like a giant black wolf with red eyes, no legs, ghost wolf. And now this story and this type of experience has been repeated over and over again, including on your TV show. Have you seen anything like that yourself at Skinwalker? There have been lots of reports and lots of things reported similar to this over the years. Have you seen anything like that? Any spirit entities wandering around the ranch?
Yes, I have. I saw some shadow figures go across the flashlight at Homestead 2 and also Homestead 3. And then interestingly enough, I actually had an experience early on. It was as I was working on building a road around the perimeter of the property so we could easily get the UTVs around for security. And I'd taken my wife out there to show her the progress, let her know that indeed when I was out there working, I really was doing something. And there's one spot in the center of the property where the UTV trail goes down into the creek and then crosses the creek, comes back up. And I had got it built all the way up to the creek, and I was working on trying to get it up the other side. And her and I had walked down to the creek side, and down at the creek, we're probably about 15 feet lower than the bank. So you walk down about 15 feet in elevation. And while we're down there standing at the creek bank, my wife said, "Tom, look, there's dogs up there." And up on the ridge there, looking down, is a whole bunch of dogs. I don't know how many there was, like 7, 8 dogs, all different sizes, all different breeds. And, I was pretty aware of, we had dogs, there were tribal dogs that would tend to pack up. And once they start getting into packs, they start, harassing livestock and becoming a nuisance. And so I was conscious of this, and I immediately ran up there. And it should be noted that when I took her down there, it had been raining for the previous couple of days, so the soil was really, really muddy. It's like a clay. And we ran up to the top, and I couldn't see the dogs anywhere. But to make it stranger, there was not a single dog print in the mud, and absolutely no signs of any dogs. Then fast forward a couple years, and again,
Well, wait. Stop right there. That's crazy. What goes through your mind? You've got to try to rationalize the situation. No footprints, but you saw the dogs yourself.
Yeah, we saw them. And this was early enough. I mean, this would have been late 2016, early 2017 when this occurred. Probably, I bet it was early 2017-ish. Probably springtime. And so I think this may have even been before my head injury, which is really where I was forced to start accepting some facts out there. And so again, to your point, like, it happens, and yet it's almost like, your reticular activating system only lets so much go through. And I don't know how to explain it. I had so many experiences out there that should have spooked me so bad, and yet in the moment, I'm just like, whatever. And so, like, yes, her and I had the whole conversation over, that's really strange. Like, we saw the dogs, how come there's no footprints? And we write it off as like, that's crazy. And then that's all that's said about it. Like, we just dismiss it.
Yeah.
Because what else are you supposed to do with it?
Yeah. Which includes when we look at the evidence that has been orally handed down generation after generation after generation about orbs and spirits and what this may be and what it may represent. And then today, and you have, like Travis on the show, where physics comes into play and science comes into play and interdimensionality and extra dimensions and parallel worlds, where science is now working on this very, very diligently right now. And it supports what the indigenous cultures and of course what goes on at Skinwalker Ranch. It supports what everybody's been witnessing over the years. What do you make of that? And is it all ultimately the same thing, whether it's UAP or orbs or I don't know, ghost dogs, that it's an interdimensional component to all of this?
Yeah, well, I'll just tell you, I think where I found the most peace and where I was able to file all this away was very early on. I mean, I'd have to go back and look, but early 2016, 2017-ish, Eric had put together an entire paper where he was, now realize this is early on before a lot of the stuff had happened, but he was he was working on the theory that it was EMI that was causing this. And the reason is because if your body is introduced to strong electromagnetic interference, it can mess with your senses. And you go look this up, you get your head between two strong magnets. You can have ringing in the ears. You start having a metallic taste in your mouth, or like the taste of blood in your mouth. You can smell sulfur or burnt rubber. You can start seeing flash lights in the corner of your eye. You have ringing in the ears, and you have vertigo. So like strong EMI can affect the body and really influence your senses, and it can make you think you're seeing things or hearing or sensing things when in fact it's not real. There's not really a dog there, but the EMI is messing with your head, and your brain is still getting the signals that indeed it is. And here's a perfect case in point. Get a group that has a UFO sighting and they all describe it differently. Could it be that they were seeing it differently because it wasn't real? What they were experiencing was a strong EMI, and all of their minds pictured a different type of spaceship. You know, when I think of it, I think of a flying saucer. Maybe somebody sees cigar shape. Maybe someone sees a triangle. Where it's not really, I mean, it's real in our heads, but it's not coming through our eyes. It's actually coming through signals in our head. And the same could be said, like, and I'll tell you, we have instances where we're seeing things, but the camera didn't. So does that mean that it was real? Or does it mean that we were being messed with? And the reason I say that brought me peace was that was a very logical explanation, that when I'm seeing things, hearing things, that kind of stuff, I could be like, oh, we probably just had a strong electromagnetic wave go through here that messed with my senses, and it wasn't really real. It was just in my head, if that makes sense.
It does. Well, and that forces me to ask you, do you think that now, especially with the rest of the team, that you have an open mind about this, you've had enough of your experiences, and then that opens up the ability to observe too as well, and to sense and to see things?
Oh, absolutely. And I think some of it could just be explained. You know, I've asked myself many times, do I witness more things now that because I'm on the ranch? Or is it simply that now my awareness is such, you know, we buy the white Jeep Wrangler only to realize the next morning that 6 of our neighbors have the same one. They've had them for a year, but we never noticed it because it wasn't important to us. And now we buy the Jeep, and now that is, you know, it's making it through our reticular activating system. It's now important to us. So we like, oh crap, I didn't realize that everyone on the street had the same thing. Right. And I've asked myself that many times, like, am I really seeing more paranormal because I'm on the ranch, or am I just now registering it in my head? Like, and I will say, I do think the answer is both. I do believe there's a lot that I was oblivious to in my everyday life that I just wasn't making it through, and I wasn't registering it. But I also know there's so many events that have happened out on that ranch. If those had happened to me before the ranch, I would remember it. I mean, these are very traumatic, very you couldn't ignore them, right? And so I do know that there are events that absolutely have happened after my introduction to the ranch that were not happening before. But I also think there's also a group of things that I see now that could have been happening the entire time. I just didn't.
Yeah, isn't that strange? The same sky that's above Skinwalker is the same sky above Salt Lake City. As far as I know, you guys don't have different skies, right? But yet, in the proximity of Skinwalker, all of that's strange. There's a spot out here, it's called Joshua Tree. And it's about 40 miles from my house. It's not that far away, 50 miles. I can go out to Joshua Tree, go out to Landers, and stand out there and watch crazy shit all night long. Just stuff, right? It's the same sky above my house. And it's not like that. I don't get it. So it has something to do geographically with the location. And you guys have the triangle. You guys have it clearly marked. You know where it is on the property. Do you feel different when you're standing inside of the triangle as opposed to outside of it? When you step into it, is there something else going on? Physically, do you feel something?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
But like most of what we've witnessed on the ranch, it seems to be transient. It's not all the time. Matter of fact, I would say that it more times than not, I don't feel anything. Right. So it's the times that I do feel something is the minority. It's the small percentage. And so I tell people 9 out of 10 days, that ranch is so peaceful to me. It just feels so peaceful and serene. and calm and just like kind of a refuge from the world. And then there's that one day out of 10 where it's hell on earth and I can't get out of there fast enough.
Who sees the most UAP there? Out of your crew, is there somebody that's more sensitive than others? And I was going to tell you
That's
who
a
I
good
think it is.
question. The honest answer is it's pretty well dispersed. And I think it has more to do with the fact that, like, the times that we're really keeping a close eye and watching, there's so much going on in our experiments that require us to be present and paying attention to what we're doing. And so, we'll have somebody, we try to keep our eyes peeled to the sky, but often it's the person that's not like assigned to a task in that moment that's keeping an eye on the sky that sees it. And let's be honest, like when we're filming, we've got, there's the 5 of us in front of the camera, but then we've got 20 people behind the camera operators and the assistant cameraman and the producers and the PAs and on and on and on. We got 20 people behind us. And I'll tell you right now, our production crew probably catches more of it than we do at this point, because we're so focused in on task at hand and trying to keep people safe. A lot of stuff we do is really dangerous. And so we're focused on trying to make sure that we're being safe. And it's the production crew that has the luxury of being able to stare up at the sky, and keep watch while we're doing our thing. And so a lot of times it'll be one of the production crew that calls it out and says, look over there, and then one of us will grab it, because obviously production crew's not on camera, right? So whoever can spot it, usually they'll call it out, and then we'll be where, and then we'll find it and like, oh, look, there's a UAP right there. So it's a team effort. Sometimes it is us team members that catch it. Sometimes it's production. I don't know that I could say that there's any one person that seems to gravitate more than the other. That's a really good question.
Now, we've all seen, as the audience has observed, we've all seen this gradual change of all of you over the years. And if we go back to the start of season 1, and I'm not in any way trying to be cavalier here, you guys all seem to be pragmatic and on the straight and narrow, right at the beginning of everything. But once you witness and experience more and more events over the years, you're going to change. Who has gone the most woo? Who has gone full on? I'm going to say, can I say, okay, I'm going to preload your answer.
You go.
I'm going.
I'm curious who you think it is.
I'm
from
going
the audience
Eric.
Perspective.
I'm going Eric. I think Eric is full woo now. And he wasn't in the beginning, man. He was collecting data. He was analyzing his spreadsheets, his maps, right? And look at, and now I think Eric's gone full woo. I think he's in the deep end of the pool.
Okay. Like I can see, based on what is shown on television, why I think you could make a strong argument for that based on, how it's portrayed on TV.
Are you saying he was woo going in?
No, I'm saying of all of us, he's still the one that will literally stay up for days and days, determined to find the mundane excuse for it, right, and try to explain it like using prosaic. He's the last one to admit, and even then, it's like him having to eat sand just to admit that he can't explain what it is. And I'm telling you right now, I'm not even exaggerating this one iota. I have seen him go a week without sleep.
I can see that.
Modeling something because it's so, in a lot of ways, it's upsetting on its face, just the merits of what we witnessed. It's so upsetting that I think in his mind, like, he's got to understand the physics behind what's going on, and he's got to show that there was nothing, like it really wasn't what we thought it was, right? And so I'd say he's the one that will go a week without sleep, just completely dialed in, trying to find the prosaic explanation for it. And I think he's still the last one to admit that it's anomalous. And then,
but he'll go there, and check this out.
he will go there on. Now, here's what I will say: like when we're doing experiments, he's allowing himself to go there now, where he didn't allow himself to go there at the beginning, for sure.
That's my observation. Now, it looks like the audience is saying Dragon is the one that's full woo now. So Dragon is my answer, and I'm just rolling through here. Here's another one here. It's Dragon. He was terrified of digging. He is very superstitious. I could see that. I can see that.
He's really not, actually.
Really? Well, we're going to have Dragon on the show, everybody. Brian's going to be with us a week from today on Monday. And really quick, I want to get this in before we continue the show. We're going to have the crew. We're going to have Thomas, and Dragon, and it's live radio. Caleb. It's live radio, everybody. And Caleb at the Conscious Life Expo. And one of the things that we're going to be doing is not only this right here, where we're going to have the three of you on stage, a very special 2.5-hour presentation at the Conscious Life Expo. And we're going to have the audience there to also ask questions and hang out with everybody. And I think that's one of the things that people in the community are most interested in finding out from you guys firsthand is how has this changed you, right? And certainly you now have time to look back at all of that and to look sideways at everybody else. You know, Travis was already all in, right? and we need Travis's scientific background to help support this, but Travis is always thinking outside of the box. But do you see those changes in you too as well, that before you weren't thinking outside of the box, you were trying to contain it, but it's it's a different day today?
Absolutely. You say you witness things, you're a different person, whether you want to be or whether you're not. You can't unsee them, can't unexperience them, you know, and yeah. And that's funny because, you know, Travis is the one at the beginning. Of course, this wasn't on camera, but the very first meeting we had with Travis, he told us all flat. My first impressions of him was that he was an arrogant prick, and I was very protective of Eric because I'd been working with Eric for a couple of years up to that point. And Travis, you know, and Travis flat out told us that first meeting. He said, "I think you all are batshit crazy. And I don't think there's anything happening out there that we won't be able to explain and figure out in 2 weeks." And he flat out said, "I don't even know what we're going to do the show about, because what are you going to do when we get out there and, you know, we pull the sheet back and find Oz? Like, then what?" And I remember being so insulted when he said that in that meeting. It was the first time I'd met him. We were in the Prometheus's offices in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, so you're basically saying that our scientist is stupid because he's been out there working on this for 3 years, and you think you're going to march in there and in a matter of 2 weeks, you're going to discover all the answers that he's too dumb and we're just too dumb to figure out. And I don't know, like, there's a lot of male egos in the room, you know, there's always elbows out a little bit of posturing, trying to figure out where everybody sits. And it turns out that my first impressions of Travis were completely wrong and off base. He's actually a very down to earth guy. He's not, you know, an arrogant prick. He's quite the opposite. He's very approachable, very, just a great human being. I love Travis, you know, so my first impression was completely wrong. But, the fact that he felt like we were all idiots and that there was nothing strange happening out there. To your question, if who's changed the most, just because of that whole first meeting that we had with him, to where now, he's talking about spaceships and wormholes and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up, and we're completely connected here. It's Travis now that says this is evidence of a wormhole. Let me tell you what a wormhole is, right? And he goes through all of that, Einstein's theory of relativity, and able to travel faster than the speed of light. And this is a way that things. Well, okay, that's Travis saying the opposite of where he was when he first entered into the picture, right? That's exactly where he's at, where he's okay with going there.
Yeah, well, and look, I think he's got good reason. I think we all have good reason, because at the end of the day, and tell people, one or two of these things happen. You can explain them away as coincidences, and I did. And then 3, and then 4. Eventually, you get to 20, 30, and 40. You look like a bigger fool trying to explain it away as something mundane than you do just to admit there's something going on here we don't understand, right? And I think that where we've got as a group, and where you see Travis is we've gone through that box so many times now that it doesn't fit in any box. And so you're left looking for something outside the box to put it in, because it's defying physics as we understand it over here. And it doesn't fit clean over here. And so we've just reached that point where it's like, well, we've already looked, we've come across this so many times now. We know it doesn't fit in any of these boxes. So we're left jumping to the exotic, because the mundane, prosaic explanations just haven't covered it. And so maybe we've been conditioned over time just to be like, well, that's not going to fit. Let's just jump to spaceships and wormholes.
Well, there's another aspect to this. Production rolls in, right? Cameras, sound, lights, catering, right? All of that rolls in, and they're filming in that window on the calendar. But you guys also have data collection and cameras that are running all the time for the rest of the year. Who's looking at? You must have just hours and days of footage. How does that get reviewed?
Well, I'll tell you right now, there's terabytes and terabytes of data that hasn't been reviewed. Mm-hmm. I remember before the show even began, I was constantly running out and this was before Eric was actually living on the ranch. He's there now, but this was back in the early days before production. I would run out there and pick up an 8 terabyte hard drive from him and swap him out with the one that was full, because we had 4 of them. And so while they're being filled, when one got filled, I'd run out, meet him in Heber, about a 2-hour drive for me and about an hour drive for him. And we would swap, and then I'd take it out. And we were filling about 8 terabytes worth of data every month just on this video surveillance. That didn't include the platform that he calls Satan, which is a Sentinel assignment telemetry something. Anyways, point being, we're collecting terabytes of data every month, and it's only increased as time has gone on. And now we've got very sophisticated instrument platforms. And it's one of the reasons why we brought Omnitech on is it's impossible for any one human, for every hour of the day, we're collecting 50, 60 hours worth of footage for every 1 hour, right? Because you got every camera. And then on top of that, and then try to correlate it and say, well, when we saw something here, did we see something on the sensors? And it becomes overwhelming. And so that's one of the reasons why Brandon brought Omnitech in, is they specialize in AI and ML. And so we are moving to get that to where all that data is being put into an AI system that can, look at it. The other thing that we've done is we've employed, we brought Skinwalker Ranch Insider program on, which is a subscription-based platform on our website, Skinwalker-ranch.com. And we have live feed. We have some of our cameras live feed all the time. And so at any time, it's amazing to me that 24 hours of the day around the clock, our insiders are sitting there watching these live video feeds. And our insiders have actually caught some really cool stuff that they brought to our attention that quite honestly probably would have been missed otherwise, because we just don't have the hours in the day to review it. And so we're making headway, but I have to say there's terabytes and terabytes of data yet to be combed through that we just haven't had the manpower to look at. But with us onboarding this new AI system, hopefully quickly we're going to be able to start really sifting through that, and it's going to be able to point out things we've missed.
I remember when Brandon, with his connections, he's a known businessman there in the state of Utah, and he's got political connections, and he pulls in the attorney general. You guys all go in and sit down and have a one-on-one, saying, look, we've got stuff that is monitoring us over Skinwalker. And the attorney general, I'm going to be fair, he seemed genuinely concerned, and might I say maybe even a little pissed off that this is going on in his state and he's not aware of it, and you guys are private citizens, this is private property. And you had a few different meetings with him. It wasn't just one. But I felt that he was stonewalled by the military. Am I speaking incorrectly about this, or do you think that they weren't giving him the truth about what was going on with the military above Skinwalker?
No, 100%. I mean, that's the way we've all felt, is that there's been all kinds of blockades put up. There's been a lot of resistance, and you would think, being the Attorney General of Utah, maybe he could get some answers that we couldn't, even if it meant he couldn't share it with us, but he could at least say, I'm aware it's going on. They briefed me, and you can be concerned or not concerned, but to be caught unaware, and then when he reaches out to basically be stonewalled as well. And I guess, being Attorney General doesn't necessarily entitle him to classified information, but if there's classified information, the only information, if I understand it correctly, the only information that's supposed to be classified is that poses national security risks. And so, if there is indeed classified things, operations going on, why? And what are they observing? Are they observing us? Are they seeing the same things we're doing? There are a lot of questions, but the fact that he can't even get answers, it just shows that, this is way above this is even above his pay grade.
And it's the same thing. Let's go from the micro to the macro. The micro being Skinwalker Ranch, the macro being the big picture here. What is happening at Skinwalker and the shutdown of information is the same thing that's going on in Washington, D.C., and has been going on for years around this phenomena, right?
I believe so. I mean, I see that, and I think part of it is I firmly believe that the things we're witnessing out of the ranch do have national security implications. We've witnessed a lot of things out there that is technology that is just downright scary and disturbing. And if it were indeed a near peer that had that, we got a lot of things to worry about. I mean, we're in big trouble. But if they did, they're so technologically advanced from us. We've dropped the ball somewhere. And so we have witnessed, and even on a smaller scale, take Dronegeddon last year. Okay, season 5, all those drones that fell out of the sky. Okay, we have more than 100. I forget the exact number, but well over 100 drones dropped out of the sky. Well, Sky Elements had come in season 4 and done a show, and we had all kinds of problems, things they've never experienced anywhere else. And so, to their credit, and I'll tell you right now, Preston Ward, Tyler, they're the owners of Sky Elements. Those guys are freaking awesome. I can't say
they are. That
about
is
their professionalism.
They're very impressive. Way beyond what I'm able to think about.
Yeah, not only do they come out and do this, be part of our investigation, and it's like they're basically losing money to come do that for us. Rather than go to a show somewhere else, they're losing money coming out there. But they took it as a challenge. When they saw that, they took it as a challenge, as ways that they could improve their equipment. So what do? They go back, they revamped their software, their hardware. Like they went in, they got completely different batteries because we had such problems with battery drainage, premature battery drainage when they were there first time. And they come back and they've got this really robust, redundant system. They've got more RTK base stations. They've now got Wi-Fi and they've just layered this to try to overcome all the problems that they had the first year. What do? We put them up in the air. More than 100 of them come crashing down. Well, we start looking into it. Over the course of the year, they had replaced a lot of their drones and upgraded them, but not all of the drones got upgraded. We start looking into it. Of all those 100 drones that fell to the earth, they all had one thing in common. So the new drones that got upgraded to the 4 constellation system on the GPS system, not one of them crashed. They all flew fine. The only ones that crashed were the old system that only had 2 constellations, the American European GPS system. What does that mean? The systems that had the Chinese Russian GPS systems did just fine. American and European ones are the ones that crashed. Now, there's a logical explanation to this. Okay. Now, there's the GPS part that's still anomalous. We don't know what's causing that. It's disturbing. But the drones have a geofence system built into them. And there's 3 different layers. They hit the first layer outside of where the drone show is supposed to be taking place. They get the command to come land. They hit the second geofence and they get the command to land right there. Just come straight down.
Straight down, yeah.
They hit the third geofence and they get it cuts the power to the motors and they just drop. And that's so that they never have a drone falling on top of a spectator. And so it's a safety thing. Well, when Preston and Tyler dive into the analytics on their drones, they look, those drones that crashed, they got up to that 30-foot mark there in the triangle, very anomalous, right? And all of a sudden thought that they were half a mile away over in the East Canyon area. And the correlation here, you talked about that anomaly that with that UAP that we saw that came down, the orb-looking thing that went in and then flew out of the Mesa. Right. Well, the entry point was right where they were set up over on Travis's side in what we call the East Canyons. And then, of course, it comes out really close there to the triangle. Well, those drones get up to 30 feet and all of a sudden think that they're over at the East Canyons, which I find interesting. Of all the places in the world they could have thought they were at,
right?
The fact that they chose that specific location, well, what did that do? When the drones thought that they were somewhere where they weren't, it hit that geofence trigger inside the drone and it dropped them. Okay, so the drones performed exactly like they were designed to do. They get outside the geofence, it kills the power, they drop. They weren't outside the geofence, which is the interesting and the anomalous part of this, is the fact that they thought they were. But why? You want to talk about national security implications? What is it about? Why were the drones that were connected to the Chinese and Russian systems fine, and the ones that were only connected to the U.S. and European are the ones that crashed? Should we be concerned about that?
That's a conspiracy. That's a conspiracy right there. Let me lay something out there for you as we wrap up. By the way, great conversation tonight. Oh, also, I can't let this get away. Your wife Melissa is going to be speaking at the Conscious Life Expo.
Yes.
How are you? Are you going to be in the audience? Can I introduce her?
I hope so.
I might introduce her.
I'll just tell you, and I don't mean this to come across as pompous. People meet me and they're like, "Oh, you're great." Then they meet my wife and they're like, "Tom who?"
Right.
Tom who? Literally they go to, and then they're coming to me and they're like, "How the hell did you get her?" So my wife is on a whole different level, and I can't think of a more appropriate venue than this conference, because what she is doing with frequency and it's mind blowing. People want to be mind blown. I'll just leave it at that. I'm very protective of my wife. I'm very careful about what I share in public about her. I just, I kind of keep her protected. But any team member of the ranch will tell you that behind the scenes, like, my wife is a whole nother level.
I'm going to come up to you. You're going to go, Jimmy, it's good to see you. Yeah, Tom, it's good to see you too. Can I get a selfie with Melissa?
Yes. No, you will seriously.
Yeah.
After you spend a little time with my wife, you'll just come up to me and be like, how the hell did you get her? What does she see in you? I mean,
I love that. All right. I want to throw this out there. And Melissa, hello. Is this, there was, and I look at Skinwalker for this. It's very strange. In the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, we dig up a monolith on the moon. Right, it's buried, and it had been buried for 8 million years or 10 million years or something. And we dig it up, but the second that we dig it up, it sends a signal to Jupiter and tells ET that we have achieved that level of technology. Right? We can go to the moon, we can find something and dig it up, right? So we're that's where we are. And I kind of look at Skinwalker the same way, Thomas. You guys are up there poking around. I think there is, me personally, I think it's a ship underneath the Mesa that's covered by millions of years of dirt and rocks, natural stuff. But what if that's what ET wants? What if it was left there for us to discover? And then you go, you dig it up, you're already finding signals, you're finding interference with GPS, you're finding all of this activity. You've got the triangle roped off, right? You guys are there, you're getting closer. But what if you go and dig it up and then suddenly it emits a signal and it tells ET, okay, this is where they're at. They're starting to figure stuff out. What do you think about that? You think it's possible?
At this point, I think anything's possible. I wouldn't be surprised if indeed it was. I would think that it would catch the attention, and absolutely, I think if that's the case, I think it's very plausible that could be. And I will just say, we just finished filming season 6 here a couple weeks ago. We wrapped up this filming season, and you just wait till you see what. I need to be careful that I don't give spoilers away.
Yeah, I know. You're about.
Wait. When it comes to this subject and the Mesa and our obviously, it's no secret, and it's not going to be a spoiler to say, obviously, we are extremely captivated by what sits inside that Mesa. And so you can imagine, as we start season 6 investigation, it's at the forefront of what we want to achieve. And so I could tell you it was a major focus of season 6. And I can tell you that what we found is going to blow your mind.
Okay. Now, listen, I've got a good, as you know, I've got a good, close working relationship with Prometheus. They know me, they know my style, and they love it. They also know that it's my job to get it out of you if I can. Right? So let me ask you this. I'm really good.
You do your best.
Yeah, Thomas, I'm really good. Do you feel that there are other shows out there, not naming names, it's like pick one, that don't, the ending, right? You're not going to get to the end. Some things we're not supposed to get to the end to, right? Do you feel that we will have that, though, with Skinwalker? That we hopefully will have some resolution and that season 6 will help us get there?
season 6 is going to take us down that road. And do I believe that we're going to figure it all out? I honestly, I don't think we will. Just based on the fact that there's so many days, all of us, you can talk to any of the team members, and I've heard them express this. It just feels like we're cat and mouse, and we're the mouse.
Sure.
And whatever is there, that one interesting thing is you get these scientific guys that are so disciplined in their belief as far as what they'll allow themselves to believe. And yet you get them on the ranch, let them spend some time on the ranch, and these very disciplined individuals, scientific minded individuals, you ask them and they'll tell you there's got to be an intelligence behind this. It's too targeted. It's too there. It absolutely feels like there's an intelligence to it. And some days it just feels so far advanced from anything that we're at that I'm thinking we will only discover what they want us to discover. And but the exciting thing is I do believe that there are some answers we can get. We can find out what's in that mesa, right? We know it's there. We now have really good data to set. I mean, we've hit it a couple times with the drill. We've got specific target points. We can absolutely, I think we can get a resolution as to what's inside that mesa. So there are portions of this investigation that I'm really excited about because I do feel like there are answers within reach, and we're going to get there. There's others that I don't think we're going to, at least I don't see in my lifetime that we'll ever get to the bottom of all of it, but I do think we can get to some of it. And my very first time meeting Brandon in his office, a 4-hour meeting that we had, his whole thing about this ranch was he was skeptic too, but it all evolved around one question, and that is, what if even one of these things was like real, and
Right.
What if we could discover, even if we could just get one answer, what could that lead to in the advancement of science?
Well, let me give you one what if before we say goodnight. Let's say, what if you and Dragon, you guys get dropped down into a tunnel and you guys are digging, and then you come up to the hull of a spacecraft and it's metallic and you're wiping the dirt away and the dust. There's some alien writing there that's constructed. You guys find it, right? You're shooting video. You've got the camera and you find it, the biggest in the history of mankind. And then James Woods shows up like the movie Contact, right? And the government comes in and runs interference. And what you and Dragon are seeing is held back from humanity. That's my Pandora's box.
Well, I know the team is like adamant. I've heard Brandon be very staunch about this is a private investigation with private money. And it was one of the reasons why we opposed the Frank Dodd legislations, or not Frank Dodd, the Schumer rounds.
Eminent domain.
Yeah. Yes, there are. I understand why that was put in there. It was, try to force these companies that may be hiding some of this stuff into bringing it into the light. I understand the purpose behind it, but it also flips the other way, right? Like what can help us can also hurt us. And we fought against that. We were really concerned because what if we did find it and the government rolls in and they exercise eminent domain and now we are forbidden from saying things. And I'll tell you that the ego side of us, and I've heard all the team members be like, to hell with that. We wouldn't say anything. But that's easy to say. When someone threatens your for me, somebody threatens the well-being of my family. If it's just me, then throw me in jail. I'll sing like a canary. Right. Somebody threatens my children, the well-being of my children and my wife.
You're going to back off.
What kind of ass would I be to say, well, bring it on, right?
Right.
So it's one thing to pound our chest and say, oh, we'll never do that. I will tell you this is like there. I would hope that it never comes to that. And our intention is to be 100% transparent on everything that we find. And I'm encouraged with the direction that it's going. Hopefully, we're entering a space where that won't be allowed anymore, and the government won't have that kind of power. But I'll be honest, as much as I would love to say, oh, I'd never say that I've got pressure points, and I'm not going to say something at the risk of harming those I love. So it's a discussion to be had. Now, that being said, I do think there could be some, I mean, if suddenly the show goes dark and we drop off and you ask me questions, I'm like, I don't know. I don't think it was anything. You can know damn well that I've been threatened. And because if we can't tell you a logical explanation of what it is, you can just assume that I've been threatened and I'm just playing coy. But, hopefully that never comes to be. But I'm also not going to lie to you and say, oh, I would never hide it. And part of that comes because, there's things that have happened to me and I won't talk about them, on a personal level, with my injury. I just won't go there. And so I'm not foolish enough to think that I'm so big and powerful that I can just say, screw you to the government, deep state, whoever it is. That's I've been humbled.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Perfect show tonight, my man. And very excited to see you. Man, it's just 2 months away. You're going to be right here in Los Angeles with Caleb and Dragon, Bryant. And we're going to hang out for 4 straight days, man. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to break bread with you. And, of course, introduce your beautiful wife, Melissa. That's going to be a lot of fun, too, as well. And the links for everything, everybody, the Conscious Life Expo are below. Come and hang out with us. We've got a lot of events going on all weekend long. Safe travels down here, Thomas. Thank you so much, my friend.
Hey, it was fantastic. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
You're the best, man. From a car, secret location. I'll talk to you, Thomas. Behave and be well.
From the rest area halfway between Roosevelt and Salt Lake.
That's what I'm talking about. Thank you so much, Thomas. Safe travels home, man.
Take care.
Bye. Thomas Whitener. Perfect show tonight. Perfect show. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. And we've got a great week coming up on Fade to Black. And for now, I'm just going to depart with this and say, go Beckley Tappy. I'll see everybody tomorrow night. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go Beckley Tappy.